This is just a quick video. I figured I'd take this opportunity. One of my regular friends, sent in this watch, which is a 1967 6619 watch. These three watches represent, these two at the very least, special forces in Vietnam. In the United States Special Forces in Vietnam, starting in the 60s and into the early 70s, they did all kinds of stuff that they did all kinds of crazy stuff, working behind enemy lines, doing all kinds of special operations in places they weren't supposed to be, all kinds of crazy things that they pulled. The Special Operations Group, MACV stuff, the Recon groups. And these guys, when they were in Vietnam, the gear that they used, they expressly chose weapons and uniforms and gear that would not label their bodies as American if they were killed and found. So they would wear stuff deliberately designed to be functional and to obscure their national identity. A lot of the records of the Special Operation Group, they were all destroyed at the end of the war. So a lot of this stuff, a lot of the information about what they did and what they wore comes from veteran accounts. There is a book called Running Recon, and Running Recon, I think it was published in the 80s, and it talked about some of the gear that they had. And one of the things they had, generally in Vietnam, our soldiers, they loved Seiko. Seiko wasn't really known in America before Vietnam, but in the Vietnam War, guys loved Seiko. You could buy Seiko on base. They wore Seiko all the time. Seiko was automatic. It had self-winding. They were waterproof. They had great loom. Guys wore this stuff in Vietnam all the time. I mean, most famously, of course, is the where the heck is it? Darn it! Famously, of course, in Vietnam is the 6105 8119. That would, because of Apocalypse Now. Martin Sheen's character wore one just like this. This one's from 1971. But the Special Forces guys, they wore these things. Now, they weren't officially issued in 1965, 66, 67, but guys would buy them. And this was the model that it has been recorded that, I mean, I have firsthand accounts of Recon guys who owned these 6619s, but they bought them themselves. They could buy them on base. In country, they would buy them and wear them. Now, this is 1967. This is a 6619. This is the next iteration. By 68, these old 6619s, they were gone. This model was, this movement was discontinued, and everything went to the later models. They went to the Sua 6000 series and the Daney 7000 series. So this is 1968. 6619. These were issued. These were bought in bulk by the Special Operations Group. A guy named I think his name was Kenny Baker or something else like that. I'll have to look it up. But he bought these in bulk from Seiko. And these were the watches that were issued to guys to wear behind enemy lines. So this one is mine. Well, actually, it's my wife's. She stole it from me. And this one came in a batch of watches, also 60s watches, 60s Seikos that were in very poor condition. And this one I restored, and it runs beautifully. It's very nice. This one's rather commonly seen. This is the 7005 version. And what's interesting, there's a few things that's interesting about this one. That this watch model, by the case spec number, should just be a generic dress watch. It shouldn't have this style. This model did exist. It's in the book Running Recon. There's a picture of it there. As far as I know, this is one of only one or two of this exact model that anybody in the world knows of. I think there's another one in the UK, and then there's this one. I found this on eBay in a watch lot that also included a 1968 6105 dress watch that just had the heck beaten out of it. And it came from one estate. And my theory is that 1968 dress watch was the one that the guy wore, and that he was issued this, and he never wore it because it was in almost perfect condition. The crystal was cracked, but that was it. And I replaced the crystal. But this is an incredibly rare watch. Incredibly rare watch. But I just thought it'd be fun to sort of look at the known Recon watches. So if you're looking on eBay and you see one of these, 6619, 6119, 7005, especially this one. If you guys see this one, oh lordy. Anyway, If you're bored, Google the book Running Recon and Seiko, and you'll come up with all kinds of documentary stuff about these watches. They're cool. They're cool. They're greenish lume, and these Arabic numeral dials. Yeah, if you ever see one of these sitting around, boy, grab it. Okay, it's a fun thing to do. It's one of my favorite things about Seiko is the connection between Seiko and our military in Vietnam. It's just one of those cool things. That's why there are so many Seiko watches, vintage Seiko watches, found in the United States. I swear, because all these guys wore them in Vietnam, and then they came back to the United States, and they said, "Hey, I got a Seiko, and it's really cool." My brother-in-law was in the military during the Vietnam War, and he says that before guys started bringing those things around, before he started seeing them on military bases, he'd never heard of Seiko. He couldn't even pronounce it Seiko. He said, "I didn't know what it was." But everybody was wearing Seikos. So Seiko, Vietnam, Vietnam Seiko. Cool stuff. Cool stuff. All right. That's just a fun little thing.